What's a low-effort job with a surprisingly high salary? I worked as a massage model at a massage school. My job was to lay there and be massaged for a few hours while the students did their lessons or took their exams. It was £30 an hour, which isn't loads, but better than the £10 an hour office job I had before. Edit: just to clarify, this wasn't a full-time job. It was fairly casual, probably between 4 and 10 hours a week depending on how busy the school was that week, and only for maybe 3 or 4 months. Over the course of my many careers, I can confidently say that there's an inverse relationship between how taxing my work has been and how much I've gotten paid. The most gut-wrenching, physical and emotionally intensive labor was lowest paying. The highest paying was chilling out on some meetings and making comments every now and then on spreadsheets. My experience has been different. I've had many jobs: bartender, server, retail, kennel person, lifeguard, receptionist, etc. I'm now a veterinarian. It is by far the most difficult job. The amount of pressure and how many people depend on you is extremely taxing. And yes, I get paid more, but my debt-to-income ratio isn't great. But I really miss my carefree bartending, retail, server days sometimes. I told the story of my ex-girlfriend here on Reddit a few times. She's a highly paid software engineer for a well-known entity. Her life is like a goddamn fairy tale. I have a pretty decent semi-cushy job now, but at that time I worked as a welder and did construction my whole adult life. What was interesting about dating her was I was witness to the stark contrast between her work pay and my work pay. At that time I worked as a welder in a welding shop. I would get up early and leave for work while she was still sleeping. At the end of the day I'd battle traffic, and when I got home she was playing with her daughter or at the park or napping, etc. Her workday had ended hours before whilst I was still toiling in the shop. She was never in a rush to get to work, could just up and leave her work whenever, long before COVID, and had too many benefits to recall. Cushiest job I've ever witnessed or ever will, with high pay. I will add that I would often tell her that she earned her success because she really did. In college she would work on her STEM studies while her classmates partied. Also, I made my bed as well because in my young adulthood all I did was swill booze and party. Oh man, my aunt and uncle own a fairly large field right outside of a small town. They do all of their harvesting by the end of August. Come the second week of September, a huge harvest festival is held. The town sees like 500,000 visitors in a weekend. They clean the fuck up every year for it by charging $12 a day to park. They even let people camp there and charge $45 a night for camping. It's crazy. They don't even do anything. They have a bunch of kids volunteer to park cars as a part of school community service. They donate maybe a quarter of the earnings and pocket the rest for operational costs. I worked at a college. Our IT guy slept during the day. He had a night job. He was a backup IT guy for the other college in town and did their IT work at night. We kept him and outsourced his job to the IT guy at the other college. Each IT guy had 2 jobs, their day job and their night job as the IT guy at the other college. New York State. One of us was a SUNY. The other was private. I'm sure they each made $150 a year minimum. In case you're interested, our IT guy worked on a program schools use called Banner. He was actually an expert at it. He was such an expert that SUNY Central Administration in Albany, not SUNY Albany, would contact our guy if they had a problem their IT department couldn't fix. He honestly was good, but he was underused. We didn't need that level of expertise, and he was completely unsupervised. BTW, I'll confirm only what school it wasn't. I'm still working in that general field. I think this is true with a lot of managers. If you hire good people, you don't have to do a whole lot. My manager doesn't. We have a self-managing team for the most part. And our workload is medium heavy, and we try to do as much proactive stuff, so we're not bothered on the weekend. Edit: I didn't expect my small comment to get so many replies. I didn't mean to imply that a good manager does nothing. I meant a whole lot of managing the small things. micromanaging your team just to get them to complete their tasks. I understand a good manager still has a very full plate, but usually that plate is full of things to progress, and not a plate full of dealing with employees. Honestly, almost any IT position at a school is cake. Almost half of our IT department doesn't even have a degree, and the ones that do have it, it's in cybersecurity. They dick around with a few Chromebooks or iPads and watch YouTube most of the day. I envy them. I bust my ass for $17 an hour cleaning the school, and most of them are making $23 changing out the occasional ink cartridge and hiding in their office looking busy. Lol. Fucking cool guys though. We shoot the shit for like an hour a day just talking about anime, what we did to our project cars over the week, and a few of them helped me get into crypto. I'm hoping to see some decent returns, maybe help pay for some night classes so I don't have to clean toilets anymore. As a remote stenographer myself, I don't think this fits. It's a difficult job and easy to justify the hundreds of dollars an hour stenographers can earn. It's translating English to English using a complex code at uncomfortably fast speeds, and in court reporting at least it has to be perfect and verbatim. It has tremendous perks like flexible hours and no commute, but low effort almost never describes the act of writing itself except for on the luckiest of assignments. Steady, clear speech in line with your dictionary of shorthand entries. That being said, maybe captioning, which I don't do, is easier than court reporting, but I doubt it. You can paraphrase in captioning, but you probably have to write a more diverse range of words. Call center management. Not even something high up like operations or quality assurance. Even being middle management can be lucrative. I've worked a few call center jobs. The people on the bottom absolutely get fucked over, overworked, stressed out. But once you get to management, it's fucking easy. Last call center job I worked, I got promoted to management just due to how long I had been there. After the promotion, I was paid $50K per year to sit at home, listen to people do their job, fill out paperwork, and have the occasional web meeting. I spent more time playing video games and working out than anything else while on the clock. Funniest part to me is that when I gave my notice, they tried to offer me a promotion to stay because I was such a hard worker. I was super tempted to laugh and tell them how little work I actually did in a day. I have some relatives that work for the U.S. federal government that often talk about jobs where they work in areas like accounting and project management that make over $100,000 and might on a busy day have as much as 2 hours of actual work. My aunt was talking about this one older woman near retirement that made over $120,000 a year, and her only job was running some transactions every morning, which usually took no more than 20 minutes. Then she would spend the rest of the day knitting at her desk. Government work is fantastic, low stress, lots of benefits, great work-life balance. There are downsides, but honestly, I'll never go back to the private sector. Now I can also work from home, so I essentially have a job that is impossible for me to get fired from. I have zero commute and a relatively decent salary, and I don't really feel guilty about it either, because I have worked in the private sector and the stress and overwork and lack of any meaningful vacation time fucking sucks. I'm in government. My small department of 8 people has 1 full-time admin and 1 part-time admin. Our full-timer is the soul of our team and is ready to help us ASAP. She is amazing. There isn't much work for her to do, so she finds ways to fill her time. Versus the part-timer is useless. Lucky to get a response to an email within a week, but if I walk across the hall from my office to hers to ask her to do a task that is under her job description, she writes it down on a notepad and then says it's on my to-do list. But IT is part of your job and should have been done already for me because your job has specifically timed duties, and now a human cannot receive a specific type of medical care till you do IT, but they are here right now for their scheduled appointment. I used to work in government administration and it is a really great chill place. Things do move at a much slower pace there. I had some issue with my computer, so IT just got me a new account with new email and all. What I didn't notice was all my scheduled meetings etc. was still only on the old account, so when I noticed I hadn't been at any of those weekly meetings for a couple weeks, I figured if they need me they know where to find me. I was already planning on leaving a couple months after that. No one even asked why I didn't show up to the meeting anymore. It was a perfect workplace. The typical earnings for that job are grossly overestimated due to a couple articles that went around with zero sources. I don't doubt there might be a select minority that earn that much, being over award rate and knowing the right people, but generally it is definitely not the job you want if you want to earn big money. I worked that job for 5 years for multiple companies. My biggest week earned me $2,300 before tax, and it was a horrible week. I would work, have less than adequate sleep, and then get back to it. Barely had time to shower. Generally the hours are inconsistent too. I'd earn $1,501 a week, then nothing for the next 2. If you want an easy, but well-paying job, this isn't it. Some days were easy, but often it was hot, but stressful, or all of them combined. People hurl abuse at you. You nearly get killed. If it isn't that, you go mad with boredom. It is not healthy to stand in one spot for hours staring at nothing without stimulation. I will never go back to that job and don't recommend it to anyone. I had a job like this. I got paid $28 an hour working as an administrative assistant in a high school. It takes like 15 minutes to input grades and send truancy letters. Answering phone calls always resorts to just transferring them to the principal or school nurse. Literally nothing to do. I left the job because there's no work in the summer, school is closed, and honestly, the environment was toxic. When you have that much free time at work, people want to start talking about their personal lives, and I don't like to talk about mine to my toxic co-workers, so I left. This job was the definition of money doesn't buy happiness. Staffing and recruiting, but specifically on the business development or sales side of things. I don't even make sales calls much anymore. It's just repeat clients. They call me up and say, hey, we need a quality manager ASAP. I say, cool. What does it pay and what are the top 3 things you need to see on a resume? I get that and then give it to recruiters who spend a week or 2 finding the right person and walking them through the hiring process. I spend 15 minutes on the phone and a month later I get a fat commission check. Edit. It's easy now. Building a book of business and learning enough about every type of position that exists at every industry to the point where you know what you are talking about and people will trust you was hard. My current job, project manager for US-based Fortune 200 company, permanent work from home, makes 6 figures. And I do maybe 4 hours of actual work each week. I have my home office set up where I have 2 gaming monitors connected to my gaming laptop sitting on my desk directly in front of me. Then I have my work laptop sitting to one side that's got the volume turned up so I hear if I get an email or message. When I do, I handle that, then go back to my personal laptop. Most days I'm either playing video games, watching movies, browsing Reddit, studying for new certifications, or doing stuff around the house like laundry, dishes, cleaning rooms, food prep, etc. People on my team constantly say things like, man, this workload is insane. I've got the same and even more than some. It's so boring. But they're paying me to dick around most days. Security PM here for a global tech company. Can confirm. My job is to meet with my stakeholders once per month to collect updates on risks, and write reports every now and then. 6 figures, and I'm interviewing next week for a position that is $180,200K/year. I was actually having an existential crisis about this last night because I realized how income inequality is so fucked up. My job honestly doesn't matter or benefit society, but teachers and caregivers do, and it's just not fair. I work 10x harder while in retail and customer service than I do now. When I was backpacking, I signed up to a temp agency in Sydney who would hire well-presented front-of-house staff for corporate firms who like to have a pretty, young, well-dressed thing manning the reception desk whilst their clients came. I often got paid $30-40 an hour to welcome clients, show them to their meeting room, pour some water and order their catering. And that's all I did, in fancy beautiful offices overlooking Sydney Harbour Bridge etc. Once the regular receptionist got back from leave I'd be popped onto the next one. I did a stint at Sydney University at one of their newly built research centres. All I did was direct people to the lifts and the right part of the building for their meeting. I made enough money doing this to backpack through the entire east coast of Australia over 3 months. I think this thread is missing the mark in some of the responses, because people are still looking at it through the lens of how much effort or time it takes to do your job, and then these crazy salaries. One of the reasons that some of the salaries are high is because of the value these people have to the business or the government. So for example, for the person who has a special skill that only has been working for 25 minutes a day, and watching movies for the rest, just wait until that special skill is needed in an emergency. Usually that alone justifies the cost of having them sitting there all day. I'm an admin at a state university. I'm new and do not affiliated as the country's civil worker. I don't know the proper English term, so my salary is under minimum wage. However, other co-workers who are civil workers got paid 4-5 times bigger than me, plus tons of additional aid salary. Oh, might I add, we have the same job desks. The job desks, honestly, it's depend on the semester. On the beginning, middle, and end of semester, it's real busy. Other than that, very slow days, checking students' attendance, finishing report, or answering students' administrative questions. Heck, I saw my coworker who shared the same office room with me came to work at 8:39 and left at 1 p.m. Often she spent the days on the office pantry, cooking and gossiping. I understand why civil workers got bad reputation in my country. Slacking off workers yet humongous salary. Sometimes I hate coming to this university for work because the salary is very unfair. We have the same job desks, yet vastly difference in salary URGH. But, hey, I'm still young. Job is hard to find in this economy. At the very least, with the extra time I have, I am able to spare time for graduate school, and in this university job I'm able to build relations with professors and experts in academia. Sorry for the long rant. I did dedicated tech support in the late 90s. I worked the overnight shift. We each got an average of 6 calls a night. Since most dedicated internet connections were owned by businesses and most businesses aren't doing much between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., the calls we got were invariably easy and my average call length was under 4 minutes. I actually worked less than a half hour a night. This is what would happen every call. The internet is down. Any other issue needs to speak to a different department. I'll tell them who to call and when. I ask the IP address of the router. About half of calls they don't know what I'm talking about. I tell them to have their network admin call. End of call. Half will know the IP. I do a trace route to their router. If I get there, the problem is not our connection. End of call. If I can't reach their IP, I look at where the trace ends. Unless it ends on a router with the specific kind of name, less than 10% of the calls, I look up that router on a spreadsheet that tells which network engineer is responsible for that router. I email them the problem, tell the customer we are working on it. End of call. Sometimes the customer has ADSL. This was pretty uncommon, and there's more to those calls. I telnet into the router the trace stopped at, and flip the connection. This usually fixes the problem. If it doesn't, I email the engineer. End of call. I made $67,000 a year doing this. Adjusted for inflation, $110,000. Easiest job I ever had and the best paying. I was also single and living in an apartment that cost $265 a month, all bills paid, and drove a 10-year-old pickup. Now I make about $32,000 a year, pay $800 a month rent, and that doesn't include electricity. I also support a 15-year-old daughter. A long time ago, at the beginning of university, I did voice-over for porn that was in a different language. I usually showed up around midnight after the legit voice-over people had left for the day, did about 4 hours of work, and was paid $35.70 an hour. Most of it was just making different moaning sounds because apparently sexy moans sound different in different languages. I'm not surprised tbh. I remember French classes a cat said something like meow instead of meow. Everyone was totally professional and after a while it was just a job I did 4 nights a week that paid pretty well. I stopped because the studio was far away and the more intense school got the harder it was to manage a night schedule with classes. But honestly, if the chance came up I'd probably do it again if I needed to save for a vacation or something. Some kinds of writer. 99.9% of novelists, poets and playwrights make sucky money. People who do technical writing earn more, but not enough given the time and expertise needed. But it's also possible to crap out content in certain fields. I'm looking at you, health and fitness, self-development and positive psychology, at £100 per hour plus. No specialist knowledge, originality or talent required.